You're listening to the Briony Kennedy Lifestyle Edit, brought to you by Adorn Cosmetics. Hello and welcome again to another episode of the Briony Kennedy Lifestyle Edit. My name is Jack Thatcher and I'm once again joined by the gorgeous Briony Kennedy, from which all this is possible.
Oh, I'll take that after another 3 a.m. start. I'm starting to get into a regular pattern, being up with the sparrows.
That's good. Well, you're already warmed up by the time we get going at least.
Yes.
But we are going to continue our chat on fashion, all things fashion, with a beautiful guest that we've got in with us today, Briony Croft, who's giving us her time and her knowledge on all things fashion. And today we're going to be talking about sustainable fashion with Briony. So I'm going to hand it over to Briony.
I know, what a mouthful.
It's a bit, it's a tongue twister to have a chat with Briony about sustainable fashion.
Briony, before we get into our little sesh, you'll be happy to know that Jack cleared out her wardrobe, did a bit of cleansing, and she did a bit of darning on the weekend. She was sewing buttons onto jackets she never knew. She did some darning, and I said, wow. I said, pet. I said, love. Look at you go, using your fashion that you've got, or your style, or your pieces in there. And I've even got is it Christopher Cronus? That fashion label from God knows how many millenniums ago.
We don't need to mention how long ago.
Okay, yes, that's right. It might be showing my age. But yes, I've got those pants on, so it's quite pertinent that you're in today talking about all of this. One of my passions, everybody knows, is sustainability and waste. So thank you for coming on to this episode to discuss all things fast fashion. And I think what would be great today is to delve into how we can be purchasing more responsibly, but I think looking at what we've got initially in our own wardrobes and getting in line with that whole circular fashion, which we're quite circular beauty here. Yeah. So anything that we can do to keep pieces in the loop a lot longer, and I think work with what you've got. So I guess starting with your background, Briony, you are an image and branding specialist. Yes. And so, of course, you're looking at your clients and assisting them with not only their brand and the image that they're trying to project, but what I'd love to know, and I know a lot of our followers are really, really interested in making do with what they've got. And one of the things that I like to do when I'm trying to reinvigorate a piece of clothing is try to add different accessories. So I'd love your feedback around how people can maybe, like Jack, have a clean out, get rid of the stuff that isn't suiting their brand.
Yep.
Keep some core pieces. What would they be? And how can they feel like they are maybe not going with the fashion, but feeling a little on trend with maybe some things they've had for a long time, so that they're not contributing to more waste? Because I think, it's like 10% you were saying of the world's carbon emissions?
Yeah, it's atrocious.
Yeah, and 500,000 tonnes of textiles being discarded into landfill. And a lot of those textiles don't break down either.
Absolutely. So polyester is
devastating.
It just never breaks down.
It's devastating. And I can understand from, a vegan perspective that, a lot of the leathers and things like that, it goes against what they would like to be wearing. But it's the fine line between, cottons and some of these fabrics that require a lot of water, a lot of land to produce and to have, and as opposed to, I understand some of these cheaper textiles to produce, but then we're stuck with them for a lot longer and trying to get rid of them. So for me, I'm really passionate about finding ways that we can still look good and feel good with as minimal impact as possible without walking around naked, because that would be the most sustainable fashion, wouldn't it?
we might get cold.
We could get cold and we'd probably get a bit sick looking at each other too. So apart from being naked, what else can we do? I told you it was going to go off on a tangent, girls. What more can we do? Or what less can we do with our fashion?
So this episode, I'm going to really focus on what is the end part of my service, which is focusing on the clothing. It is focusing on the physical part of the wardrobe. So, okay, there is a lot we can do. First and foremost, what I am going to say is don't put don't put too much pressure on yourself. You can only get better.
Yes.
Right? With understanding, because there are so many fabric types and there are so many materials. You can only take smaller steps to understand the process of how these materials are being made.
Yes.
Rather than putting yourself under so much pressure to make the right decisions all the time.
I agree. It's all the small collectives that make a big difference. You don't have to change the world, just do a little thing.
Absolutely. So let's talk about your wardrobe, Briony. We're going to use
my wardrobe. Oh God, I'm still wondering what you were talking about with the way I'm hanging my clothes up with my hangers. That was another. I've got notes here. I want to know how I'm supposed to store my clothes because I got into trouble.
Well, this is actually a good point, because if you've got a wardrobe and you can't actually see your clothing, you're actually not using your wardrobe to its full potential, which means you're probably going out and purchasing new things that you've actually already got in your wardrobe.
Yes, good one. Yep.
So that's tip number one. So first things first, you need to do...
no drawers. We want all things hung up.
Look, I know that sometimes that would be preferable. I know sometimes that's just not possible with wardrobe size. That would be the ideal. But look, if you can... the way you choose to fold things, for example, in your drawers, rather than stacking them on top of each other, instead roll them and put them back to back against each other. So you're actually seeing the colours and you're reminding yourselves of the pieces that you have in the wardrobe. My little challenge is, Briony.
Oh, God. Okay. I don't like being told what to do.
I would suggest for the listeners as well, everything in your wardrobe, flip it all around. Anything that's hanging, flip it around so it's hanging the opposite way on your hanging rack.
Yeah.
And when you wear it, flip it around the right way.
Okay.
So
what's the wrong way?
So just the opposite way. So when you hang a
what?
piece of...
Is this new to you, Jack? I'm like, what the right and wrong?
I think I'm just going to butt in here. I think what Briony's saying is, so when you're wearing it, the hook goes over the bar.
Yeah, the hook.
Okay.
Like when it goes on from the front to back, but then when you're wearing it, you turn the hanger around so the hook's coming towards over the bar.
Or vice versa.
Right.
Or vice versa.
You're welcome.
Thank you for clarifying that.
We just had a little moment.
A little moment. Jesus.
So what that's telling us is two things. Number one, if you've actually got pieces in there that you're not wearing, why aren't you wearing it?
Yeah, okay.
Is it because you've forgotten about them but they're still in good quality, or is it because it actually doesn't suit your personal style anymore and is actually a piece that you could send off to get recycled or...
Yeah, good tip.
So that's where I would start with that. That's going to make sure within a 3 to 6 month period, anything that is still hanging the wrong way, meaning you haven't worn it, I would be looking at them and asking some pretty serious questions of why it's even hanging in your wardrobe.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
That's what I do with my clients, except we don't do the hanging of things. I'm just brutal with my clients' wardrobes and saying, well, why aren't you wearing it?
Because I think too, you would be almost stuck with the decision, because there's so much in your wardrobe too that you might have that, I don't know, decision fatigue, or you might just not be able to make a decision because there's just too much looking at you as well.
But maybe I might wear it to this, or maybe I might wear it to that. If it's a maybe, it shouldn't be in your wardrobe.
Yeah, I agree.
It just shouldn't be in your wardrobe. There's a reason why you're not wearing it. So that would be my first tip as far as creating a wardrobe that works for you, and you're then able to see a consistency with the styles of pieces that you can then refresh and give a new life to. So the next step is, based on the pieces that you have in there, do you have any gaps that need to be filled? So, for example, like you mentioned earlier, is there a lack of accessories that actually, if you were to add a silk scarf to that look, is that going to completely change the look? And how many different ways can you actually style that silk scarf with the many outfits that you have to give your wardrobe and your image a new leaf?
Love that. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that's a really good place to start with creating that circular wardrobe for yourself. And then what I would say also, if pieces are starting to look really tired, or you're sick of them, or for whatever reason they just don't have a place in your wardrobe, look for brands that will actually reuse the fabrics and reuse or break down the materials to be made into something else, because there's some amazing organisations out there.
Yeah.
So one that pops to the front of my mind is a business called Apparel.
So heard of them, yes.
So you can basically get a box of things and they'll pick it up from your house, and they will literally go through every garment. And if it's appropriate to send to a charity to resell, then they will do that. Otherwise, they will literally break down the fabric to be able to be recycled into something else, made into something else.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Love
And
that.
I actually would say at the moment, a lot of op shops are inundated with clothing.
Yeah.
And
I think people think they're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Giving it to the op shops.
Yes. But sometimes
But then what are they doing with the stuff that doesn't?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
It's often getting sent overseas, and then that's becoming part of the landfill problem that the fashion industry is contributing to. So I really would invest in having a look at a few different companies that you can send your clothing to.
Yeah. And a lot of those, is that a free service that you can just send your items to than sending it there, or?
I think it's a very small fee for them to come and pick it up.
Yeah.
So they're really jumping on the convenience side of it as well.
Which is, you've got to spend petrol to drop it off to
Exactly
wherever.
right.
So it's the same sort of thing.
Exactly right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because I for me, whenever someone has mentioned to me, oh, look, I'd love to be able to update my wardrobe, and they might say to me, oh, you're always wearing bright colours and this and that. I'm like, yeah, but what I try and do is incorporate a lot of accessories to try and make things look different as well. I know I've got, personally, as you've seen, I've got quite a decent size wardrobe, but a lot of what I've got I've bought a long time ago because I'm very clear on what I like. And so for me, I think it's more of a style than, I don't buy things based on fashion. But what I will do is buy accessories. So I love brooches, bangles, or even just to change the look of a jacket, I might sort of roll up the sleeves of the jacket so you can see more of the shirt, or bigger earrings. I think that sometimes if you just invest in a few cute accessories, then you can definitely make something look like a totally different outfit.
Absolutely. One thing I will say is your wardrobe is full of colour. When you do have a wardrobe that is full of colour, you often need to have a few more pieces to make it work.
Yes.
Because colour blocking can be quite difficult to do when you're dealing with vibrant colours and patterns.
Yes.
And that is probably one of the reasons, without you probably even knowing, why you have slightly more than the average wardrobe, I would say. So if you are really wanting to be smart about a circular wardrobe for yourself, really invest in those neutral pieces. So for example, I would say spend a little bit more money on, for example, a camel coat or a trench coat, where you are literally going to have that for 5 to 10 years. Those never go out of fashion. So just be conscious of the pieces that you are spending more money on that you're likely to get more wear out of.
Yeah, I would agree with that, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think browsing is an issue for people. Like I think that you can mindlessly just be adding clothes because it's on sale, or it's or like, oh, I don't know, I can have another colour of this. Or so I think the browsing can end up contributing to not only a loss of money on your behalf or spending money that you don't need to, but you're then mindlessly just adding things. And I think it's that mindlessness that not only then do you buy something you don't know whether one, you needed it, or two, does it even work with what you've already got? So I know you talk a lot about getting very clear of what's in your wardrobe and what are the gaps. And I think then would you ever recommend people maybe writing down what the gaps are?
Definitely.
So,
I have a list on my phone. For my personal wardrobe, I have a list on my phone, knowing the pieces that are getting pretty tired and then I'll probably retire from my wardrobe pretty soon. I have that list on my phone at all times.
Yeah. And so then if a piece pops up, like whether you're at a shop and you're like, oh, yep, I needed a white shirt. Yes, I'm happy to get that.
Yep, absolutely.
It's like meal plans. Then you don't deviate off getting a Cadbury block and, donuts and stuff because you're starving as you're shopping. I know, don't you look at me, Jackie, you wouldn't even dare look at that stuff. But I would. I'd be adding it all to the trolley. And I think that's what it would be, wouldn't it? It's like meal plans.
Absolutely.
It makes sense.
Absolutely.
I love that.
And also the fashion industry, especially in Australia, we're educated to wait for a sale.
Yeah.
And if you walk into one of the major department stores, you can't walk through there without seeing sale racks of buy one, get one free.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, that temptation side of things. But really, that is us getting sucked into the marketing of the fashion industry, where we are contributing to potentially this stat of being...
It's overconsumption.
It's overconsumption.
Yeah.
It's overconsumption.
Because people are worried about, and I find it quite interesting, and I have to say when I was a lot younger, I probably fell into this trap a little bit, but definitely snapped out of it now, and that is that people are worried about others seeing them in the same thing, especially at an event. And it's like, do you honestly think that people pay that much attention to you?
Yeah.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
They really don't. So,
social media has a lot to answer for in this too.
Yes.
People don't want to be seen in the same outfit when they're talking on camera or on their stories for Instagram. That's become a real problem too, especially I would say for the younger generation coming through and who they're watching as influencers.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think that look, if that's your I suppose genre of work, I can understand that, but I think that it's also something to be proud of if you have had a piece of clothing for a certain amount of time as well, and just know that most people are not sort of paying that much attention to you. If you are wearing a dress to 2 weddings, people are not too concerned. But there's definitely an uptake now of more businesses that you can rent from.
Definitely.
And look, and I have to say I've rented a couple of dresses before COVID, and I thought that was an amazing idea. And one of the amazing team here was telling me on a recent Adorn trip that she has a membership with a company, and I can't think of their name. But anyway,
I think I know who you're talking about. Glam Corner?
Yes,
and you can
pays a monthly fee.
And you get 4 to 5 items per month.
So it's not just about like event wear. Now you can get your corporate or your casual stuff. And then of course they sell it if it gets to its end life. But I thought, how amazing is that? Because if you are only really sort of using things a few times, or you can't get your head around not you want to be in fresh things all the time, I thought that's a really great way of helping the environment.
Absolutely. And there's also another business that essentially for a brand, they have some additional stock at the end of each season that technically is going to go out of fashion. But as we mentioned in the first episode, as long as you're not shopping for fashion and you're shopping for style, it doesn't really matter what season the clothing is coming from. And there's a great business called the Archive Place that essentially is taking old season stock direct from brands, so it's brand new stock, selling it for a fraction of the price, and it's making sure that clothing from these brands is not being sent over to landfill.
That's amazing.
So there's those kind of options as well as, for example, Airrobe. Have you heard of Airrobe? So Airrobe is a lot of the bigger companies like the Iconic use it. Essentially, when you purchase something from the Iconic, for example, you select Airrobe and it saves all the details of the piece of clothing that you've purchased. So when you want to resell it, it goes onto a second-hand platform, so you can jump on and purchase it second-hand rather than purchasing it new.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I think, and I'm glad to hear from what you've mentioned, that there are some brands now that are actually giving their clothes to these entities that do something with it, because, I guess some of these more designer brands, it'd be nice to see. I can understand from a business perspective why they don't, because I guess there could be that shift in devaluing their brand. But, it is these higher level designer brands that just do not engage in this at all, and they do throw out their end of line or what's not in fashion. And it's really quite sad to see that they still contribute to this, and it'd be great to see them definitely coming on board.
Yes.
And I understand some of these higher level of fashion brand or these designer, you might have them a bit longer because there's maybe a bit more that's gone into them, you've spent more money. So I understand that, but there's still that accountability of what they've got left that doesn't sell, that they don't like to do any of this responsible stuff with, which I find irks me a little bit.
Well, the Archive Place that I just mentioned, they actually are working with local brands. They're all Australian brands, and the Australian brands that they're working with are trying to stop this concept of the sale training that we've all got to learn. So they often don't go on sale, the brands that the Archive Place stock. Which I think is also really a very good shift in the Australian economy for fashion.
Yeah, it stops that impulse buying,
Absolutely.
like you said, that browsing and that impulse buying.
And it also means that brands, from a business perspective, brands can actually forecast smaller ranges that are going to sell, rather than this whole concept of fast fashion that we can thank, Zara, H&M and the likes of those brands that have trained us to think that we can get any kind of designer for a fraction of the price at any time.
And it lasts a fraction of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not, and one of the things that annoys me is that not just, the fact that I think if you quantify, and my mum makes me laugh because she will look at a piece of clothing and she will work out, okay, if I'm going to spend $200 on this dress, she'll work out how many times she knows she's going to wear it. Yeah, price per wear.
Price
Is that
per
a
wear.
thing?
It's a thing.
Like, okay, it's
price
a thing.
Per wear.
Right. So I always found that quite fascinating. And so if you took that and looked at some of these fast fashion products that you might be buying, and you're looking at how many wears you might get out of it, it's really not that cheap at the end anyway, because you're not getting much out of it, as opposed to maybe if you saved that money a bit towards more of a higher brand. And I have seen that there's been some stats around a movement towards more prestige or luxury brands. There's been, even with the economy the way it is at the moment, there has been more of an uptake in luxury brands, and I'm hoping that these people can afford it, and they're not just doing it for the image. But I'm hoping what the reason for that is that they're seeing that there is that benefit of holding back on some of these other fast fashion items and then putting their money towards something that's going to last a lot longer.
Completely agree. And there's definitely been a shift in the way that people are thinking about clothing, for sure, without a doubt. I think the Gen Zs that are coming through, ethical clothing and what we're doing to our environment is actually the key driver.
Yes.
So from my industry, being the fashion industry, brands that are not keeping up with that and not doing something to partner with companies who are affecting or trying to change these stats on the fashion industry are going to be left behind.
Yeah, absolutely.
They really are. It's just for our age group. I think there's still a lot of education that needs to be shared. And I think if there's anything that's to be taken away from today's chat, I think if you know some of these stats, share them. The fashion industry seems to get away with a lot.
Yeah.
And if you know these stats and you can help people understand them to make better choices, and like we said, you don't have to change everything straight away, but if you can just make a small little change, it's actually going to have a huge impact in the long run. Yeah,
look, definitely. And I think there's always that balance, isn't there, for businesses? It's that, and I know when I started Adorn, it was, you need to be profitable to stay in business. Let's not, there's no way around that. And I guess with a consumable product like makeup, then, there is that, constant ongoing purchase. But, everyone's in business to make money at the end of the day. And so where is that balance, I suppose, for some of these brands that, they do have that constant, like new collections and things like that. I get from a business point of view, but how do they balance that off with their footprint? How do they balance that off and provide, I guess, an end-to-end solution like Adorn does with the refills, and then not only keeping our packaging in the environment or in the consumer's hands a lot longer, but then when it can't be, or for hygiene reasons can't be refilled, we take that back and we take responsibility for recycling those things.
Yeah.
So I think you can be profitable, but have some purpose behind what you're doing and provide that whole, that circular wardrobe or that end-to-end solution.
Yeah, absolutely. A brand called Nobody Denim based in Melbourne, they actually do have recycled denim. So there's a collection. It's not all of their jeans from my understanding. I could be wrong on that, so don't hold me to it. But there's certainly a capsule part of their collection that is always 100% made from recycled materials, which is amazing.
Yeah,
amazing.
Absolutely.
And every brand, I think, in the future needs to have at least start with those capsule wardrobes while we move our way forward with how we construct our clothes.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Well, look, before we finish, I just want a really quick, because it's still annoying me that you didn't like how I was keeping my clothes. And I've got these beautiful gold hangers for my clothes. Everything's all colour-coded. So what can we do just in a few little tips to maintain the life of our clothes with the way we're storing them? More we can hang up so we can visually see them, and I'm a big fan of that. I need to see things because
Except for your nets. Don't hang your nets.
Is that what you were getting mad at me for?
No, I was getting mad at you for the type of hangers that you had.
Oh.
I know they look beautiful, but they're horribly impractical for your clothes.
Oh, why? Why?
Because they've got a sharp edge.
Yes.
So anything that has a sharp edge on the, I say that as I'm rubbing my shoulder,
you do get the little imprinty bit, don't you?
You get the imprint. So you're stretching the fibres, which will never stretch back. So the life of that piece of clothing is much shorter because of the way you're choosing to store it.
What if I fold them in half and like on the bottom bit of the hanger, I'll just flip them over that?
And you're not going to see it.
Oh, God. No, I was so excited when I found my gold hangers, listeners. What the? Now I've got to...
They're beautiful hangers. They look beautiful.
Maybe I'm going to have to get some...
But there's beautiful hangers that are also functional.
So what, they have like felty stuff on the edges
felt
or something?
I think if you've got a smaller wardrobe, the felt hangers are the best option because they've got a softer edge. If you've got a larger wardrobe, the wooden hangers are good, but they take up a lot of space.
Yeah, and then you can't have as many clothes.
Yeah. The other thing I would suggest in your drawers, buy the little sections.
Oh, yes.
They're a really great way just to keep everything organised. The amount of wardrobes I go into, the last two bottom drawers, which, might be the athleisure drawers or, the basics drawers, and there's just stuff thrown in there.
Yeah.
You just need to have a system.
Mm.
As with everything, to keep organised, just have
Agreed.
a system.
Yeah.
Have a system.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. I've enjoyed that. I love talking all things sustainability, circular wardrobe, circular beauty, circular everything.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear from our listeners what they maybe do to keep their clothes not on gold hangers, keep their clothes in their wardrobe for a lot longer, and what maybe sustainability tips that they have. So thank you so much for joining us, Briony. But before we go, where can our listeners find you?
So best place to find me, I think, is probably on Instagram. There's lots of content up there that I think a lot of your listeners will get quite a bit out of. So Insta, obviously my website, which is brionycroft.com.au. And LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Yes, absolutely. Yep. Thank you for your time.
Thanks
I've
so
loved
much.
it.
Yeah,
Thank
me
you.
too.
You've been listening to the Briony Kennedy Lifestyle Edit, brought to you by Dawn Cosmetics. Luxury without the guilt.